Hi guys, it's Angie with Fun Endeavors Tie-Dye Lab. Today let's make an ice dye geode shirt. The shirt was prepped like normal and I have it turned inside out. I'm beginning by finding a place on the shirt where I'd like the center of one of the geodes to be. I'm going to pinch that area of the shirt and lift the shirt up off of the table. I'm going to give the shirt a shake so that it falls naturally, and then I'm going to slide my hand down to where I'd like the bottom of the geode to be and start tying from that area. I think that when I tie from the bottom of the geode out to the center of the geode, it just looks a little bit more natural. It doesn't give the geode kind of a bullseye look. It's a little more wrinkled and it just kind of flows a little better as far as I'm concerned. The closer I get to the end or the center portion of the geode, I'm going to take that fabric that's left at the end and push part of it down inside of the geode. This will cause some wrinkles and give the center of the geode an interesting look. Once I have this geode tied, I'm going to continue tying geodes on the shirt. You can put as many or as few geodes on a shirt as you'd like to. And you can make the geodes various sizes. I try not to make all mine exactly the same size. Once I have almost all the shirt covered with geodes, I'm going to go ahead and put some sinew lines in this center portion of the shirt. That's where all of the geodes meet on the shirt. There's not enough space in there where I can tie any more geodes, but I would like to have some line definition from the sinew. So I'm just wrapping the sinew around this area really tight. I'm not doing any particular pattern, I'm just putting sinew lines in this area of the shirt. That'll also help the shirt lay a little bit flatter and make it a little easier to apply the dye to. So for this shirt, I'm going to use some earth tones, various browns, darker greens, and a few golden colors. So if you've ever watched any of my geode videos, you know that I usually do not dye a geode until it is totally and completely dry. So I set the shirt aside and I allowed it to dry out completely. That lets me get better color saturation into the center of all of these geodes. If they're too damp when I start applying the dye, that's going to yield some big white streaks in the middle of my geode, and I don't want that. I'm going to ice dye the geode, and I'm going to ice dye it down in the muck. So I've placed it down inside of a container, and I've used an entire 7-pound bag of ice over the top of the geode. I want to make sure I have a really good layer of ice on the shirt so that I have plenty of muck after all of the ice melts. That's really all that muck is. It's the runoff from the melting ice that is mixed with the dye. Then I'm going to apply the dye over the top of the ice, which is also known as a dye over ice technique. Sometimes you'll hear it referred to by the initials DOI. You also may have heard the initials DUI, which for ice dyeing means dye under the ice. And in that case, I would have added the dye directly to the shirt and then place the ice over the top of the dye. So most of the time, I try to add the dye in some sort of pattern. I either go by the lines of the geodes and try to add the dye that way, or I'll add the dye in stripes across the top of the shirt. But this time, I decided to just add the dye totally randomly and see what happens. So that's all I'm doing, is I'm adding little bits of dye over the top of the ice. Down below in the description, I have a list of the colors and where I purchased the different dye colors, as well as a list of a lot of other items that I use when I tie-dye. But I'm going to go ahead and list them off for you here. I'm using Amber Waves from Dharma Trading Company, Palomino Gold from Dharma, Olive from Pro Chemical and Dye, Herbaceous from Dharma, Moss Green from Dharma, Who's the Moss from Dharma, and Who's the Moss is one of the muck colors that came out pretty recently, so it's kind of a special color that isn't around for a long time. You may not be able to get that one anymore. Harvest Wheat from Pro Chemical, Brazil Nut from Dharma, and then over the top of everything, I'm going to add a really generous coat of ecru. Ecru isn't really a very dark color. It is just kind of like an off-white that has a tinge of olive in it. It looks really good on geode shirts. I use it a lot. It kind of fills in some of the blank spaces and it just adds a little extra dimension to the shirt, I think. I also added a sprinkle of dry soda ash over the top of everything, and then I set the shirt aside to allow the ice to melt. I try not to disturb the shirt at all if I'm going to ice dye in the muck. I let the shirt process for at least 24 hours after all the ice melts. Okay, so to rinse the shirt, I begin rinsing in cold water to rinse the soda ash out of the shirt. I'm a little bit concerned about this one because it's really dark. It looks like it's just pretty much a brown shirt. After rinsing in cold for a while, I untied the shirt and warmed the water up to hot to rinse out any of the excess dye that didn't bond with the fabric. Then, because the shirt is so dark, I'm going to go ahead and soak it in some hot water along with a little splash of Blue Dawn dish detergent to see if I can get out some of the excess dye. I changed out the water when it cooled off and continued the soaking process until the water was almost clear. Then I washed the shirt in my washing machine along with a little bit of Dharma's textile detergent in a hot water cycle. And after the shirt was washed and dried, this is how it looks. Okay, so what do you guys think? It is a very brown shirt, but that is on me because I chose colors that were all very similar. I mean, the greens that I chose had a very brown tinge to them. So it doesn't totally surprise me that it's a pretty dark shirt as far as the brown goes. But I actually like it. I mean, it's a really pretty earth tone shirt. The turquoise color that you see in there, or the light blue, that came off of the Herbaceous from Dharma. That's a pretty color, and that's one of the splits that came out of that. There is quite a bit of color variation. I know it's a little bit difficult to see from the photos just because, when you look at it, it looks like it's just primarily brown, but it does have a lot of variation in there. The Palomino gold and the amber waves do give some of that golden color. You can see it on the front in one of the geodes for sure. It also has a very green feel to it, which is coming from the moss and the herbaceous and the olive. And I like that. I definitely think it looks very rock-like or geode-like. Do you see what I mean about when you tie from the bottom of the geodes out toward the center? It does away with some of that feeling of a bullseye on the shirt. And then pushing the centers of those geodes down inside as I'm tying, that gives a very interesting look to the very middle part of the geode. I also like the added lines that I put in the shirt after all the geodes were tied. Remember how I went back in with the sinew and I added the lines in the shirt? You can see those in both the front and the back. And I like that effect. It gives a lot of interest in that part of the shirt. It's not just solid color right in there. It makes the geodes kind of flow into one another, which in my opinion gives it a more natural look, and I like that. I also noticed that on one of the geodes on the front side of the shirt, the one that is over on the left-hand side of the shirt, at the edge of the geode, it almost looks like a rhino's face. One thing that's a little bit difficult on this shirt is seeing what kind of a difference it made to apply the dye randomly over the top of the ice. Because the colors are all fairly similar, it is hard to trace each color and see exactly where it ended up. I applied the dye randomly over the top of a single geode the other day to see what kind of a difference it made, and for the most part, the dye did like normal and followed the sinew lines on that shirt. I was trying to see what kind of a difference it made on a geode shirt that had multiple geodes, and it's a little difficult to tell on this one. It almost looks like it followed the sinew lines on this shirt as well. But I can't tell for sure because the colors are so close. So even though the shirt is a little more brown than I was expecting, I really still like it. I think it looks pretty and I like the colors. I think it's a great earth tone shirt. And if you guys have enjoyed the content of this video and watching this video, I sure would appreciate it if you would like it and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.